Hi, I'm Tony Stevens. The video you're going to see right now we're going to take and we're going to cover up an old tattoo. You're going to run into a lot of this in the tattoo business. There's going to be names to cover up. There's going to be just tattoos that weren't done well, done by people that just started in the business. If you watch this video, you're going to see a real easy way to cover up tattoos, and there's a lot of good hints in here about doing stuff on tattoos, cover-ups. You don't need to use black all the time. That's an old fallacy when you're doing cover-ups. So watch this video and you'll see how to cover up a tattoo. This is the piece that we're going to use to cover this tattoo with, and you don't have to worry about covering things with black or other real dark colors. This purple and stuff is going to cover up the main part of these roses, and they got a thick outline, so we'll do some extra black shading in on this picture here. And when I put the stencil on, you'll see that some of this old tattoo is going to stick out a little bit, and that's okay because we'll change some of these leaves or whatever we need to make it fit. Now we got the stencil on here, and you can see that most of this of the roses, it fell in the bottom of these flowers here. It's good. There's a couple little spots where the tattoo's sticking out, but that's okay. We'll just bring this flower out a little bit here. You can widen up this stuff in here. You'll see as I go along, there'll be nothing showing, but the majority of it is inside the old tattoo. And what we did was, you can see this is the darkest part of that tattoo right here, and that's where we got the darkest part of the old tattoo is going to cover it up right there. Okay, we're going to start with the outline on here. I'm using a number 5. I'm going to use a little heavier outline on this piece. Only because some of those petals of those roses are sticking out. So we'll go through this outline, and you'll see when I get up to where the old tattoo is, where I'm going to modify it. I'm not going to follow these lines exactly. You just got to watch the old tattoo and make sure that when you're drawing on the new stencil, like right in here, this is where that leaf sticks out a little bit. So we're going to change this whole configuration of this leaf. I'm going to bring it in close, and then instead of having it go straight up, I'm going to turn it. So now it covered up the old piece. Instead of that following that stencil, I just curved that leaf a little bit. If you're doing stuff like animals or something like that, think in the terms of background for cover-ups too. You don't necessarily have to have a piece that's going to cover it. A lot of times you can put backgrounds in on pieces, and that'll also work and cover up some stuff. You just keep following through your outline. Now you can see that this leaf on the old tattoo sticks out past this line here, so we're going to change the shape of this flower now. We'll just bring it out. So some of this is going to be done freehand, but you shouldn't have to do a whole lot. If it looks like it's going to be confusing, take a ballpoint pen and draw it on there first. If you're afraid to do it freehand, you can just take a pen and kind of modify the design before you start doing your outline. Most of this piece was covered up pretty good with this stencil, so some of these leaves on the bottom, I'm just going to make these a little bit smaller. I don't really need them that big because that's not where the cover-up is, so I'm going to shorten up some of these on the bottom. You don't need to do that tall. And remember, when you're doing this, just concentrate on the lines that you put down for the stencil and try to ignore the old tattoo behind it. Don't even look at it. Otherwise you'll get confused when you're doing the lines, when you're doing your outline. If you start staring at that other piece too much, just forget about it, like it's not there. This particular piece right here, the old leaf, is almost the exact same size as that one. So I'm going to bring it out just a little bit so there's some new color on that rather than just over the old one. Because I want to put some highlights in the edges of those sleeves. And this one, I'm also going to change. I don't need it that high. I'm going to change some of those leaves. Just keep following up all the way up your outline. If you run into trouble where you're drawing and you kind of lose yourself, just stop, wipe it all off, all the ink off, and take a real close look at where you're at. Especially if you drew a pen, sometimes you lose some of the ballpoint pen lines, so you may want to stop and redraw them on there. This is the same thing here. We got a small leaf on this, and then we got a big one here, so we're going to change that. Kind of almost follow the old one, and then bring it out a little bit wider. And this is the easy part up here because there's nothing that's covering, so you just follow it around. It's usually better when you're doing a cover-up to use a little thicker outline. Some people like to outline all the time with 5 needle outliners, or I use a lot of 3 outlining needles. This one, I'm using a 5 on here because the heavier lines will define this new tattoo a lot better than having some real fine line work over it. We're almost done here with the outline. I'm going to spray this off and we're going to look at it, and then what you want to make sure is that all the old tattoo is covered up. You know, if you have a little piece anywhere that might be sticking out, you can always add an extra leaf here or there. Okay, now we're going to shade this piece out with some black shading in here. I'm using a 7 shader, a round shader. It's going to be important in here to go through over some of the outlines and stuff to darken them up a little bit before you put the color in. Especially where this old tattoo is, I'm going to bring out some black shading in this piece. If you remember looking at the color picture, there wasn't a real lot of black shade on this bottom of these flowers, but we're gonna give it more shadow than it had in the picture because it'll help cover up some of these. The guy that did this tattoo used a real thick needle to outline a small piece, so he's got some real heavy lines in here. We want to get rid of some of that. So the black shading will cover up some of those heavy black lines that he had. And it'll make this piece look more three-dimensional. Just going to pull in and out and get rid of some of this. I'll show you where I covered up that old one right in there. You can see where the top of that old rose was. Start with some black in there and just kind of pull it out real soft. And it'll cover up some of those heavy black outlines, and it'll add a little definition to this one. You don't have to worry about covering the whole thing with black either. I'm only doing this one, and the way I set this new stencil on here, I've got the old tattoo towards the bottom of the flowers because that's where the darkest shading is. So you got to kind of think of when you place that new stencil on. I wouldn't want those roses right in the middle of these flowers where I want the light colors on the top. I want those to be clean colors and be able to see them. In the middle of the new flowers here, it doesn't matter if there's shadows down in there. You just kind of go through the whole thing looking where you want to add some shadows. If you think some of the color is going to be too dark to cover up with what you have, just put some shadows in there. Just don't go crazy with the black. People tend to think that black is the only thing that covers up tattoos. The only time you need black to cover up a tattoo, solid black, is if A, you don't know what you're doing, or B, the thing is so dark that there's no other alternative. You can still go in here with some white even if you had to. and put some white over some of these colors and let them heal. Have the customer come back in a couple weeks and redo them. White will pretty much cover up 1 or 2 hits of white. You can cover up even solid black old tattoos. If you watch some of our other videos that we have, you'll see we talked all about shading and black and gray shading on some of those other videos, and if you watch those, you'll know pretty much what we're doing on this one too for cover-ups. So all those things you can bring in when you're doing a cover-up. These are some of the harder things to do, so you want to know all those different techniques. We're just going to add a little bit of soft shadow on the bottom side of this flower here. Seeing that we use some of that black shadowing on the bottom, we're going to use a little bit on the top so it all matches when it's done. Just a little bit down on the stem here. And remember your light source side. We talked about that in the other videos too, that you're drawing light from one side of the piece, so make sure you're only black shading on the one side. You see on this one, I'm adding all the center lines of these stems in. I'm doing it with a shader rather than an outliner because I want a little bit thicker line in those. So just look everywhere where it's overlapped. You want a little bit of shadow. And then on one side. This side, we've got the light source coming from this way, so we're doing all the shadows on the opposite side. I'm going to spray this off so you can kind of get a look at what we got here now. And there we go. We took a little bit more black in here at the bottom of these things and then faded it out towards the top. And I'm not worried about this red in here because that's going to be all done with purple. And we'll clean it up and then we'll start doing color. What we're going to start with now, we're going to start doing the color on here, and I'm going to take some blues and I'm going to pull up some blues through these flowers, through the bottom of the flowers, then we'll fade them up into a purple. We're going to kind of blend those colors. And kind of take that color and go right over the black shading that you did too. Mix that right over it. You gotta remember this, don't pound real hard on these things and try to, if it doesn't look like it's covering real good, that's okay. Let it go, and you can always have them come back after it heals in 2 weeks and give it another little shot of ink rather than chewing up the skin. You should go over it just like you're doing a regular tattoo. One time, that's it. I've seen people where they grind on these tattoos and they try to get them to cover up in one shot, and it really doesn't do you any good. All you do is you scar up the skin and you lose half of the new ink anyway when it goes to heal. So don't be afraid to put light colors over dark colors. You may have to go back and hit it a second time, and that's not a big thing. You can already see that blue's already covering up most of that anyway. You can't see the old stuff. It'll get easier to see your design once you start getting rid of the old one underneath it. It'll start making a whole lot more sense to where you're trying to go with this thing. So just keep pulling that color up out of there. Get rid of that old one. You'll start seeing the new flowers start taking a shape. Now up here where I didn't have to cover up anything, I'm going to take that same shade of blue that I'm using and I'm just going to shadow it in there real light. I'm going to kind of fade it, brush shade it in, just so all the colors follow up through the tattoo. And that's all we're going to need for that color. Now you can see where the blue shading has been done all up in here. We're going to start taking a purple and we're going to start bringing it in a little darker at the bottom and then fade it out softer at the top. I'm using pretty much straight colors right out of the bottle here. I'm not mixing any of these. This purple I'm going to take and I'm going to use it straight. It's just a straight purple color. This is good that now you can see that what colors. I'm not worried about blacks covering reds. I'm using purple over it. And purple is a good cover-up color. Green is a good cover-up color. There's some companies that even they call them cover-up green and cover-up purple. They're okay. They're just a little thicker and they're not really necessary to buy. Your straight colors will work just fine. You gotta remember these, you gotta tell the customer that the old tattoo sometimes will swell up underneath when you're done and it'll still look like they can see it. And they're not really seeing the color of it, they're seeing the old outlines and stuff with that scar tissue up underneath there. So don't panic if you're done with the tattoo and you go, God, I can see this, the old one swelled up. That's normal because you're going over it a second time now with new ink. And you're going into that scar tissue and it tends to swell up. Once that swelling goes down in another hour or so, you won't even see it. I'm just blending these colors right up on top of each other. And see, we started so dark where the old tattoo was. We definitely want to get them lighter at the top. You want this big dark tattoo, you want some nice light color. We're going to put some white highlights in this and when we get to the bottom. This is where the light colors are going to be. So I'm just going to take a little bit of this purple and just shade it out real light towards the top. Just to give it a little bit of color in there. And then we're going to go in there with some white and bring out. I'm going to spray this so you can see what's going on now. You can start seeing now the flower's starting to take some shape in here. Even though this looks a little dark in here, when this heals, these colors, the new colors are going to be real bright. You don't have to worry too much about that. It'll be fine when it all heals up. So just keep bringing that little bit of that lighter color towards the top, just brush shading it in. The next color we're going to do, I'm going to do the green on the leaves. So you're going to see me leave this alone here for a few minutes and we're going to go to the green. We're going to get that all done and then we'll go back and put all the highlights in there and we'll have everything all set with that. Spray it off one more time and that's pretty much it for that, for the purple. Okay. Okay, now you can see that we got the blue, we got the purple. I'm going to go in here and do the green. We're going to get the stem done in here. You want to remember, you can leave the flower alone with those light colors. Still work it just like a regular tattoo. Do the darker colors first. Normally, on some of the other videos, you hear me tell you start at the bottom and always work your way up with the colors and stuff. On this particular piece, it didn't matter because the darkest colors were at the top anyway. There wasn't really that dark of a color down here at the bottom. And you can see some of the old tattoo under this one, and I'm going to do the same thing. I'm just going to color it like I normally would with this green, and I'm going to leave a little bit of the edge for some highlights. Again, so everything's not one shade, everything's not real dark. Remember I was telling you when I went over it, you can see this one particular leaf has got an old one in there. So you want to just bring your color up, but I left a little bit of new skin. I made that leaf a little bit bigger than the old one, even though it exactly covered it. So I can put some new ink with some real light edges on it. So it won't ever tend to be a big one dark spot on there. Sometimes you have to be a little creative when you're doing cover-ups. You know, adding little pieces here and there, but when you're done, you'll have a nice picture rather than just trying to find one that exactly fits over it. That's almost impossible. You're always going to have to do a little bit of work on them. I'll cover up these green ones up here. Now it's starting to take some shape here. I'm going to wipe it off and you can see what we did with the green. Spray a little green soap. Now you can start seeing the shape of the flowers where the greenery comes through. Now I'm going to go back, I'm going to put in some yellow, and then we'll do the last of those white highlights. Now you can see it's all cleaned up, and we're going to put in the yellow. Now I'm going to work it from the bottom up. I'm just going to put in some yellow highlights in this stem here. Whenever I do stems and stuff like this, I go right over the old color that I just put in. The old color, the new color actually. I go right over that green because the yellow will always show through, and it'll give it like different shades. You'll go from yellow to like kind of a lime green to dark green. And again, all these colors that I'm putting in here now, these light colors like the yellows and stuff, you're bringing them up into where that old tattoo was, and that's going to help lighten up that old ink underneath and give it a really nice look, and it'll never look like a big blob. Just remember, when you do a cover-up, you don't want it to look like you did a cover-up. There's nothing worse than seeing hearts with people's names in them, and people just take black ink and cover it up. There's plenty of ways to get around that. Putting flowers over the names and stuff like that, or tribal designs work well, rather than just taking and blacking out a banner. And that's probably going to be one of the bigger cover-ups you're going to do with a lot of names. You'll cover up names on people. So you want to make sure when you cover it up that people aren't going, hey, what used to be underneath there? You want something that's going to cover up there and look at it and go, hey, nice tattoo. That's about all we need for yellow in here. I'm going to clean this off, and then you can see what it's starting to look like now. You got all the leaves all done up in here. Now I'm going to go in with, I'm going to make a mix. I'm going to take some of this purple that I used here, I'm going to mix it with a little bit of white and finish following up here, and then just a little bit of white highlights, and we're going to be done with that. Okay, now I'm going to go in, I took that same purple that I had there, I filled an ink cup with white, and I just put 2 drops of that purple in and mixed it up. So I'm going to get kind of a lavender color here. And white is pretty opaque, so it'll cover up all this, some of that old stuff without a problem. It'll go right through that. So I'm just going to bring some of this lighter purple down in. Start just defining the edges of these things. And again, I'm leaving a little bit of room at the edge because I want to put a little bit of white highlight in it at the end of this thing. You can take this lighter color and kind of follow the shape of that flower down. And I realize you're not always going to be doing flowers, but just remember these little things I'm showing you, like pulling some of these lighter colors in, no matter what you're doing, whatever the subject is, you can pull some of those colors in around the edges of the outlines to lighten things up. Because all your cover-ups aren't going to surely be this particular piece here. Just remember, keep some light stuff. Always leave room for light colors, light highlights and everything. Just bringing this softer purple color, this lavender, up around the edges. And the absolute edge of these I'm going to do in white. This way, by changing these colors like this, you're going to get a nice graduation of colors. You went from that blue to the darker purple back into a lighter color. And that's going to be pretty much it for that. I'll wipe this off and you can kind of see where we're at with that. You can see now that the flowers are almost all covered up, and that's pretty good. All the lines, the old lines from the old tattoo are gone. And now we'll put some white in. Okay, I'm gonna put a little bit of Vaseline over that, and I do that again so it's easier to wipe this. White's a little chalky when you work with it, so it tends to smear up a little bit. Now I'm gonna go back in and put the white highlights in the edge of this thing, and we're gonna be almost there. This last color here, doing the white, this will define if you got any lines that look a little dark down towards where the old tattoo was. If you have to, again, just like I was doing with that lighter purple and stuff, bring it in and around the outline, you know, on the light side of the tattoo where the light would be, and you can put those highlights in to define stuff. So you never want to leave anything that looks undefinable, that you can't tell, oh, what's that line from? You know, is that part of this or is it part of that? Everything should be, you know, individually, you should be able to look at everything as an individual piece and see what it was. You know, it's a petal of a flower, it's a part of the leaf, no matter what you're covering up. I'll do that down on this flower here. I'll show you what I'm talking about. Because where this flower comes in, it gets a little dark down in here. You just take that white and you just pull that in and around the edge of these petals here. And you'll see when I'm done here what that'll look like. It'll make it really stand out. You can see now that you can start seeing where this flower comes up into this one. Even though they're darker on the bottom, there's still going to be some light hitting it somewhere. Just follow that white in all along the edge. We're just about finished here with this whole piece. Just remember, I've been tattooing for a while. I tattoo a little bit faster than you may be going. Don't worry about how fast you're going. Just make sure you're putting it nice and even. You're not overworking the skin. You're keeping the color nice and even. And like I said, I'm going to remind you again, you can always go back after it heals. I guarantee all the work we do in our shops, and we tell people don't worry about it. If something pops through, we're going to go back over it. Normally you don't get that. If you take your time and you put the color in right, you normally don't ever have to go back and do any touch-up work on these. We're going to wipe it off and give you a good look at what it looks like. And there's the new tattoo.